Hey, what's up everybody, Ivan Otingra here. Thank you so much for joining me again on another episode of the English the Smart Way podcast. I'm really excited because today I'm talking to one of the founders and teachers of Learn Real English, Kristin Dodds. Kristin has more than 20 years of experience teaching English to speakers of other languages. She has taught English in South Korea, Thailand and Japan, as well as in the United States. She has a CELTA certificate as well as a master's degree in TESOL, which of course stands for Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages. Kristin Dodds with AJ Hoge and Joe Weiss run together Learn Real English, which helps students around the world becoming fluent and confident English speakers. The Real English Conversation Lessons, which is the name of the course, teaches you English without focusing on grammar rules. Instead, you listen to real English conversations of native English speakers. This way, you will learn grammar subconsciously without even realizing it. In the first part of our interview, Kristin is sharing with us her challenging first experience in teaching English in South Korea and her soon realization that studying grammar to succeed in English isn't effective at all. Later in the interview, Kristin talks about acquiring language in the most natural way, by listening a lot, which is actually very similar to the way how children learn language. We also talk about how opening up to culture of a country can help us tremendously with our language learning. Kristin then shares with us the success story of her Thai friend, her number one tip for English learners, and she also talks about the benefits of free voluntary reading. So let's dive right into the interview. This is Kristin Dodds from Learn Real English. Here we go. What's up everybody? I'm super happy to bring on Kristin Dodds from Learn Real English. She is one of the founders and teachers of Learn Real English. And I have to say that I have discovered Learn Real English just about a year ago when my friend Massimo invited me to join his online conversation group. And Massimo told me about you, Kristin, and your great English course and how it has helped him to become fluent in English. And I wanted to experience how is the Learn Real English course like, so I decided to join the course last summer. Today I'm really excited about our interview because I know that many of our listeners know you already, and at the same time there are so many English learners who will meet you for the first time today. I believe everyone listening will learn something useful, practical, and we will all get inspired. So thank you for being here, Kristin, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ivan, and thank you for having me.
I'm really happy that you accepted the invitation. And when I started podcasting, it was just an idea that maybe someday in the future we would have talk like this. So I'm really happy about this.
Oh, good.
So as I said, I know that many people from subscribers and members of English the Smart Way know you already because they joined your course and so on and so on. But anyway, there are many people who don't know you yet. So could you please tell us a bit about you? Your hobbies, your interests, anything you like.
Okay, sure. So I'll start off by saying I live in San Francisco, a very beautiful city here in the state of California on the west coast of the United States. And I've been living here for 9, maybe almost 10 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, before moving to San Francisco, I was living in Thailand where I was teaching English. So I've been teaching English for about 20 years now. And I've taught all ages, from children, from kindergarten actually, up through into college age and then adults. And I started off by teaching in Korea. So I've I've actually taught in Korea and Japan and Thailand, and I've done live seminars in Thailand and Malaysia.
Mm.
And I've also taught here in the United States, actually in the state of Georgia, which is in the southeastern part of the United States. It's right above Florida, and which many people know Florida because of
Yeah.
Disney World. So that's the state that I grew up in. So I've taught adults in Georgia. And then, now I have with Joe and AJ, we have Learn Real English together. So we teach our students. Our students are around the world. So because it's a internet-based business. So some of my hobbies are being out in nature, traveling around the world. I love traveling, learning about other cultures and meeting people in other countries, learning about their cultures. And I have a deep passion for animals. So I've volunteered at many different places with animals. In fact, I've even done this at times when I've traveled. For example, one time, Joe and I actually volunteered at an elephant sanctuary in northern Thailand. So we were helping do different things around the sanctuary to help maintain the sanctuary, that these elephants that have been rescued from abusive situations where they are currently living in much, much better conditions. So that's a little bit about me. I wanted to go back and say, when I was speaking about Learn Real English and how our students are around the world, so they're actually adult students because our lessons are made more for adults and adults that also have at least an intermediate level understanding of English.
Yeah. Thank you for your introduction. And there are so many questions that are coming to my mind I would like to ask you, but so where to start. So more than 20 years of teaching English, and different age categories of your students. And what was your motivation to go into teaching?
Well, it's kind of funny. My mom is actually, well, she was a teacher. She's retired now. She was a high school English teacher. And she always encouraged me growing up to become a teacher. And I never wanted to, probably because that's what she did. And I wanted to do something different. So I've always been very drawn, or when I say drawn, I've always been very interested, as I said a little while ago, in other cultures and people from other countries. So it's kind of, I guess it makes sense to me why I got into teaching people from other countries, teaching them English. So what started this was an opportunity that I had right after I graduated from college with my bachelor's degree. I had an opportunity to go to Korea to teach English for a year. What interested me the most in doing this was actually to go live in another country. I was very young. I was just out of college. So I really wanted to travel. And so that is what started me teaching English. I got to Korea and I didn't know anything about teaching English. I didn't know anything about teaching. I'd gotten my undergraduate degree in something completely unrelated. I was told that there would be a training to teach me how to teach.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there really was not a training. I was just put into the classroom and expected to teach. So I quickly learned things to do in the classroom. But after that, my time in Korea, I realized that I wanted to teach more in other countries, but I needed training to do that. And so, I went back to Georgia, the state where I grew up in, and started teaching adults there. and taught them for a bit. And then I decided to go and get a teaching certificate. It was a 1-month intensive program in Boston. So I went and did that one summer. And then I felt like I wanted more training. So a few years later, then I got my master's degree to teach, English to speakers of other languages. So that's how that kind of started.
So, but your first experience was with teaching English was in Japan, right?
No, Korea.
Oh, sorry, Korea.
Yes, Korea.
But it was a quite tough experience when you expected that you will get some, how to say,
Training.
some training in teaching, and you didn't get any.
No.
And when you didn't have any training, what did you do? When you went to a class with children, and
Well, me and I think there were 20 teachers. They were mostly from North America, so they were from Canada and the United States. We would all kind of bounce ideas off of each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's an idiom, bounce ideas. So meaning we would talk to each other and share ideas.
Yeah.
And it was hard. We would play a lot of games. We would teach through songs.
Mm-hmm.
That was really good with the younger children. So Beatles songs are great because the lyrics are very easy, and actually we would do Beatles songs with the older kids. But then children's songs in English, teaching those to the younger kids, they loved it. And so games, songs, we were given books to use, these little grammar books. We would use those a lot. So I was actually teaching grammar then. I no longer do that. But so it was very challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine, because yeah. And so we mentioned that that time when you taught English in Korea, you used grammar books because you were told to use those grammar books, right?
Yes, we were told to, and we would have some of the Korean staff would actually come around and look in our windows and into our classrooms to make sure that we were teaching the way they wanted us to teach.
Oh, interesting. So they wanted to have like a control over how the
very much. Yeah, and that was a little intimidating, and it was very frustrating for many of the teachers because we felt like none of us were truly teachers, and we hadn't been trained. And the Korean staff, and this was just a big cultural difference. We would have meetings, and the Korean staff would tell us in the meetings everything bad that we were doing with our teaching, and they wouldn't have any suggestions. And so that just kind of made the teachers angry.
Yeah.
We weren't used to being told what to do, and there was no positive reinforcement, basically.
Yeah.
And we felt like we couldn't really talk to the Korean staff to suggest ideas because it's very much a hierarchical system.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more like, we're your boss. We tell you to do this, you do it.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was not only that we didn't get trained well, but there was a whole cultural difference too that made it very complex and challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine. Huh. And it was your first experience in teaching, and all together, yeah.
Yeah. So the good news is when I left and I moved back to Georgia and got the job teaching adults, it was very much a supportive environment, and I could do whatever I wanted to do and was supported. It was the exact opposite of what I had experienced in Korea. So that part is good because I was a little hesitant after my experience in Korea to teach anymore.
Yeah, because of that bad experience you had. And
yes.
So when you were in Georgia, your students there were adults mostly. Yeah.
Yes, they were all adults.
And what have you learned from teaching adults?
Yes, so with the adults, I was given textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
So we were using those because here again, I didn't really have any training to be teaching. I didn't know what to do. So we would just go through these grammar textbooks. And I was seeing that they weren't very effective, actually. I can remember this one guy, he was the sweetest guy. And he came up to me one day after class. He didn't understand very much when I spoke, and his English was very broken, but he showed me this notebook where he had written down all of these sentences in English, and he was trying to memorize them. And I didn't say anything to him, but I just realized this is just not effective. But I still didn't quite know how to teach.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
what a good effective way would be to teach. I didn't quite have that knowledge yet. I got that knowledge when I was getting my master's degree and doing some research for my degree, and that's when I discovered a man named Stephen Krashen, and as well as a man named James Asher. Stephen Krashen has a lot of research about a listen first approach. And that's how children actually learn, or from being a baby, actually, that's how a baby into a child. And then, as they grow, that's how a language is actually naturally acquired.
Yeah.
It's just listening, a lot of listening. I was just speaking to AJ the other day. He's visiting his family in Indiana right now. And he has two nephews that his sister and her husband adopted from China. And they're 2 years old. These two little Chinese boys are not even brothers. They were adopted from different places. AJ's sister has had them for about a year now. But he was telling me how they're really only saying yes and no. But he said it's so amazing how much they understand. Even though they're not speaking, they're only speaking a few words, they understand so much. So it's that natural just listening, taking everything in. And there was something else I was going to say. Oh, it's actually, I'm not quite sure at what age children start speaking. I can't recall that. But as AJ pointed out, these two little boys are 2 years old, and they were in China until they were about 1. So they've actually only been in America being exposed to English for about a year now. But it's still amazing how much they're understanding.
Yeah, and just from listening, and being in the environment. And
yes, total immersion.
And with your master's, you focused on techniques of teaching English, right?
Yes. In a more natural way without teaching grammar. And that is carried over into Learn Real English.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We don't teach grammar at all.
Yeah. That's really a good point to mention, that you don't actually teach grammar rules in your course. And I believe that many people find this fact surprising, because we as students, we are usually used to a traditional education system where grammar is often the number one thing that we focus on. So could you please introduce to us your real English conversation lessons in a brief?
Yeah. So basically, the real English conversations, it's 30 lesson sets. And in each of those sets is a conversation. Mm-hmm. It's a real conversation between two native English speakers. Mm-hmm. And at least one of those speakers is either me, Joe, or AJ. And then maybe we're having the conversation with each other, or maybe it's with someone else. Like for example, there's one conversation that I have with my mom.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
So it's real native speakers having a conversation. And then there's a vocabulary lesson where it's, any idioms or slang or words that are difficult to explain. They're explained in the vocabulary lesson then.
Yeah.
And then there's a mini story. It's a listen and answer method.
Mm-hmm.
That mini story then is done again. The same story is told again from different points of view. And what that means is they're told in different tenses. So there's not grammar being taught, but it's there because the listen and answer stories are being told in different verb tenses. So you're naturally automatically getting the grammar.
Yeah.
And you don't realize you're not focusing so much on that.
Yeah.
The main techniques are the listen and answer method of the story, the mini stories and point of views, and then the listen first approach, just listening. We recommend with our lessons, we call it deep listening, repeating, mm-hmm. listening to the lessons, just listening to them as much as you can. So it goes deeper and deeper into your brain, into your mind.
Yeah. It's like with children because they listen to the same phrases again and again.
Yes, the repetition, that's something that's really key with children. They're getting so much repetition over and over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned that you also visited Thailand. So what was your experience in teaching English in Thailand?
Again, it was not a great experience because at this point, I was finished with my master's degree, so I knew how I wanted to be teaching, but I was working at a private school.
Mm-hmm.
So I was teaching at this school that was teaching these students. It was like a study program for them to take the IELTS test.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of boring for me. There was a lot of grammar and, mm-hmm. Ways I just didn't really want to be teaching. So this was before me moving back to the United States and then a few years later starting Learn Real English. But, it's interesting, while I was in Thailand, living there, I actually had a really great experience. I met a Thai man and we started dating. And when I first met him, his English level was very low. Like we could barely communicate because I could only say a few words in Thai. And he could speak enough in English to where we could understand each other, but it was difficult. It was challenging. And because he did speak more English than I spoke Thai, that's how we communicated.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was in Thailand living for 2.5 years, and we were together. I met him pretty soon after moving there. So we were together most of that time. And then he ended up coming here with me to the United States. So fast forward or jump ahead 10, 13 years. Is that right? Gosh, I guess that's about right. His English is unbelievable. He's still here in the United States. And he's fluent now. He does have an accent, but you can completely understand him. And I'm just so proud of him and so amazed. We're no longer together, but we're still friends. And I just am just so amazed at just from being in a relationship with me.
Yeah.
And I started to say being immersed in the language. That's not so much the case because when we were in Thailand, obviously we're still in his country. Other than speaking to me in English, he spoke Thai everywhere else. And so I would say his English really took off. His English really increased when he moved here to the United States 9 years ago.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And also, he couldn't read any English. He could not read or write any English. And now he's learning how to do that. And what's really helped him with that is texting people on his cell phone or emailing people. Because, a lot of people here text or email. Text especially. We're just all too busy to call
Yeah.
each other for some reason, so we text. So he wanted to fit into the culture in that way. And so he's learned how to read and write English, or I should say type it on his phone so he can text his friends. But he can also, it's not just typing on his phone. He can also write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And I totally agree with you, with improving in writing by writing, because many people, when I receive messages from my subscribers, many of them ask me, how can I write better English? And I always tell them, just write, find some friends online, have a chat with them, because that's the way I learned.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. Because I went to school and I was using English there, but from writing articles, for example, on my blog, that helped me so much to, express myself in writing.
Yes. Another thing to do is it's called free voluntary reading. Mm-hmm. So finding something, a topic, literature on a topic that interests you. It could be a magazine mm-hmm. or a book, whatever, and just reading as much as you can, in English, and then kind of like with the listen first approach, eventually over time, if you're just reading and reading and reading in English, it's going to become kind of automatic where you're able to form the structures of sentences and be able to write.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And so your Thai friend, he could first speak. I mean, first he listened to a lot of English, but he learned how to write after he could speak in English, right?
Yes. Yeah, that came much later. I think it's because, I know from teaching in other countries and also speaking to people from other countries, a lot of times they learn how to read and write English in their public schools growing up. He left school, I think, at some point when he was in high school. So he didn't even finish. He didn't graduate. And he told me too, he was a really bad student. He's an artist. The academic way of life was not for him.
Yeah.
So even if he had English classes, and I think he said he did, he just didn't do well in them. And what's so funny? So he now has a Thai girlfriend. They're actually going to be married soon, and she's going to be moving over here with him. She has a master's degree from a university in Thailand. So her reading and writing is much better than him, but her speaking ability is not. I'm sure once she moves over here, if she really opens herself up to the language, her speaking will get much better. And that's something else too. I think you have to have that interest in the culture and in the language to really open yourself up, and it'll come. So with Watt, my Thai friend, he had that from the beginning. He really was open to other cultures, not just America. It just so happened he met me, but he was selling jewelry that he made in a very touristy area of Bangkok, and he needed to learn English to be able to sell his jewelry to tourists because, most everyone was speaking English. That's pretty much the language when you travel that other, people speak. So he learned he started learning it for that reason. So he was driven for his business, but also he was very curious and interested in other cultures. And I say interested, I can remember he was so open when we would go eat. If I would take him to a restaurant in Bangkok that was more Western food, he was open to try anything. And I remember some of his Thai friends would say to him, I don't know how you can eat that food. Like they would only want Thai food. How do you eat a sandwich? Bread, yuck. What is that? He was so open. And so I think that really helps when you open yourself, to whatever culture and language, whatever language you're trying to learn. If you really open yourself to the culture, it just helps tremendously.
Yeah, I totally agree, because it's connected language with the culture.
Yes.
And you know what I like about Learn Real English, about your course, is that you teach their idioms, and you know there are so many, like a stone's throw away. You know, something like, you know,
Yeah.
many phrases that some of the phrases I learned there, I can identify them, that we use very similar phrases in our own language, but there are so many that you know they are new to me, and it forms, how to say, it creates vision of your culture with these
Mm.
idioms. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's the thing that sets us apart from a lot of teachers that teach with grammar or with a textbook. You know, a language is alive. It's driven by the culture and it changes. That's what I mean by it's alive. It's
Yeah.
changing constantly. And so you don't get that piece of it from a textbook.
Yeah.
To me, when you learn from a textbook, and then let's say if I were to learn French from a textbook and then I went to France, you know, maybe I could speak to people, but I would probably miss out on a lot of things that they're saying because I wouldn't get that in the textbook. I wouldn't get real conversations. It would be a completely different experience.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. When I studied English here in Slovakia, and we use textbooks, and I believe the textbooks are still used in schools here. And when I came to England, I was like, oh, you are using different phrases that I'm used to from textbooks. And you know, and so I don't remember exact words or exact phrases that we were taught in school back in Slovakia, but when I went to England, and I had a chat with my friends there, and I just told them a few phrases that we were taught by textbooks in Slovakia, and they were like, it's quite an old way to say this. We wouldn't say that. Maybe maybe my grandfather would use this phrase, and you know,
Right,
like,
right.
I was like, okay, that's interesting.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. Like it could be a little bit outdated even.
Yeah, yeah, because there are
Or very formal even. Like English is so informal. But sometimes like if you're learning from a textbook, it can make it more formal than it is, or stiff and serious.
yeah,
And yeah, English is so informal.
yeah, and especially the last few years, or maybe 10 years, when information technology got so popular and people are communicating really fast, and they cut words, and creating new words, you know, like selfie, you know, and the words
Yes.
that haven't been here in the past.
Right.
Textbooks just can't keep up with the speed of how English evolves over the months and
No.
years. Yeah.
No. Oh, I wanted to say something really quickly. I just said English is so informal. I should make a correction and say that American English is very informal. I obviously can't speak to British English or, you know, Australian English. So American English is very informal.
Yeah, yeah. You know, many learners, when they are in a phase when they are starting speaking English, they don't know how to speak. So their first idea is to first think about the sentence in their native language, and then translating the sentence to English, and afterwards saying that sentence to another person. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we just translate, and then we say the sentence in English. But it has so many problems, because if we translate and if we don't think in English, then we can't be fluent, and we can't react fast enough when we are in a conversation with someone. So my question would be, how can one start thinking in English and become fluent in it? If you have any ideas about this.
So what I would first say is that if people are translating, then the level of English is maybe beyond what they understand, what they're able to understand, what they're capable of understanding. So, you know, it goes back to the listen first approach.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a time consuming process. It's an investment of time for sure. But if you really want to start automatically thinking in English, it's a matter of listening to massive amounts of English. When I say massive, I mean large amounts. You've got to put in the time, so it's deep learning. And then with more and more time put in of listening, it becomes automatic, and there isn't that delay of trying to translate it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. So deep learning and absorbing a lot of English and
Yes.
talking when we are ready to talk, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And so many times people put pressure on themselves to talk. And that's so unnatural. And that can be too where, it could be when people freeze up, they can't think, and maybe they start trying to translate. Maybe they're getting really anxious, like they're feeling like they need to perform even. So just being easy on yourself, this would be my advice for people to be easy on themselves and not feel like they have to perform or speak before they're ready to, and just getting the listening in, putting the time in to really listen. Yeah.
So, Kristin, what would be your number one tip for English learners around the world?
I would say the number one tip would be to stop studying grammar and focus on listening, and to try this for at least 1 year and see how it goes.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, it is. And honestly, Ivan, this approach is not for everyone. Some people really want to study grammar, and that's fine if they really resonate with that approach, that method, resonate if they really like that way of learning, then that's fine. But if what has been spoken about today in this interview appeals to any of you, then that would be my number one tip. Stop studying grammar and focus on listening. And try it for at least 1 year.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Kristin. And where can people learn more about you and about your work, about your course, and anything else?
Yeah, so you can learn more about me. And remember, it's not just me. There's 2 other people, AJ Hoge and Joe Weiss. We are Learn Real English, the 3 of us. So you can learn more about us through Ivan's podcast site. So it's EnglishTheSmartWay.com/Kristin. And Kristin is spelled Kristin. And you can find us through Ivan's podcast site because he's an affiliate of ours.
Thank you very much, Kristin. And I know that you also offer a free 7-day video course. So maybe if you could tell our listeners about this free course.
Oh, yeah. So if you go to the link that I just said, you will be taken to our homepage, Learn Real English's homepage. And if you can read about us on our homepage, obviously. And there's also at the bottom of the page, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a place where you can sign up for our free 7-day email course. So what that means is if you sign up, if you choose to put in your email information, you will receive an email every day for 7 days. And each of those days you'll get a free English tip. So it's completely free, and you can unsubscribe at any time. And you'll Also, not only will you get a free English tip, but you'll learn more about real English conversations.
All right. Thank you very much, Kristin. I really appreciate that you taken the time to be with us today, and yeah, I'm really happy that we could have this conversation today.
Well, thanks so much for inviting me. It was really fun doing the interview with you.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Kristin from Learn Real English. If you want to check out Learn Real English, you can check it out through my affiliate link, which is englishthesmartway.com/Kristin. That way you will support English the Smart Way project. Again, that's englishthesmartway.com/Kristin. You can get the show notes, full transcript of this podcast episode, and the links to the resources mentioned in this show as always as englishthesmartway.com/session6. You will also find there the link to my personal review of real English conversation lessons because I've been using these lessons personally. Again, the show notes are available at englishthesmartway.com/session6. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you listening in, and I look forward to serving you with the next podcast show. Until then, keep pushing forward, keep working on your English. It's one of those things that it's amazing to master. Every little step in English we take can bring us so much joy and success in all other areas of our lives. And fluent English is definitely worth that work that we need to put in. So take care, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.